from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Wow, so much has happened since Friday. I mean, we've got a huge court case. Donald Trump, attempted assassination. He moves his head, the bullet whizzes by, it hits his ear. He lives, he pumps his fist. Wow. Then we've got Secret Service failures. We're going to talk about that tonight. We've got an eyewitness that's scheduled to join us in the next few minutes. He was there. He was actually applying pressure to the wound of the firefighter who lost his life, who was murdered by the bullet meant to kill President Trump. And, of course, live coverage of the RNC. As we speak, Donald Trump and his vice president nominee, J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, are on the stage at the RNC. Nobody's begun speaking yet. We will tap into that live the minute that he starts giving his address. But if he does start giving an address, I think he's just there saying hello right now. He's got a bandage on his ear. If you're not able to see this at home, don't worry. I'm going to give you the play-by-play. Looks like he's sitting down and enjoying the show. But lots to discuss. I mean, what a weekend. I can't remember the last time that we had this eventful of a weekend. And it was the Copa America for everybody who follows football, also known as soccer. And it was Argentina versus Colombia. And Argentina pulled out a big win there. So I want to get into a bunch of this. Obviously, there's lots to discuss tonight, and we're going to do that. We've got a number of guests lined up for you to give you the play-by-play, and I'm going to give you my opinions and thoughts as well. But I don't want you to miss it. This is probably one of the more comprehensive shows that we're going to do because there's so much to tackle and so much to cover. But we've got at the bottom of the hour, in hour number 2, we've got a former United States Assistant United States Attorney, joining us to explain how the charges were dropped against Trump in the documents case when they raided Mar-a-Lago and all that stuff. It's over. It's over. The prosecutor doesn't have a case, according to Judge Cannon, and we'll find out how that's going to affect other cases. Of course, Donald Trump tweeting, or I should say truthing, right after that, saying, drop all the rest of the cases, too. And I think he's got a point there. It looks like he will walk away like we've, I don't want to say predicted, but I've kind of discussed on this program that none of these cases are going to stand up. And it's hard to juggle this, right? There's the news of the day, and there's pressing stories like the Republican National Convention and J.D. Vance being chosen as the vice presidential pick. But the bigger news is I was hanging out on the weekend. I went to go see some friends. We were at a restaurant overlooking New York City, very nice place called Waterside Restaurant and Catering, North Bergen, New Jersey. And I was there actually talking to the owner, Gus. Big shout out to Gus, and my buddy, and to the bartender, who is a listener of the show. And big shout out to Moses. He's also a firefighter. And let me tell you, we were talking about stuff, and he's like, oh, I've been listening to the show and blah, blah, blah. And I follow this feed that gives me a lot of up-to-date stuff. And he's scrolling through stuff on his phone, and there's a live feed of the Trump rally. And he was like, oh, look, Trump's having a rally. And I was like, oh, yeah, take a look at this. And then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. While we were looking at it, it was about 10 minutes after 6 o'clock, right there. You see he ducks, he falls. I'm criticizing the Secret Service, not knowing what's going on because there was no sound when I first watched it. We were watching the live feed, but the volume was off. And I was like, why are they taking so long? They're supposed to, rush him out or whatever if something happened. I said, these guys are a bunch of clowns. And I'm thinking nothing really happened, right? That it was just a loud noise or something, because that's happened in the past, right? Remember a couple of years ago, a loud bang went off and Trump ducked and whatever. So I'm there criticizing the response time and whatnot. And as he puts the volume up, it turns out this was an attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Wow. Now, so many of us, I'm sure, were filled with emotion, rage, anger, disdain, concern. All sorts of things were happening. Why? Because we've known this, right? I wish I would have asked the producers. They've been busy today pulling lots of audio, lots of clips because there's, so much going on right now. But on Friday, I think it was the final call of Friday night, and if we can pull it for later, maybe we will. But a gentleman called from the KDKA country, which is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where this rally was, right? This rally was in the greater Pittsburgh area, Butler, Pennsylvania. And he said, Rich, I'm really concerned that they're going to threaten Donald Trump's safety. I'm afraid they're going to come after his life. And I said, like I've always said to people who tell me that, they're always coming after his life. And he's prepared for that. And they have the right team in place to protect him. Because I've seen him in person several times, and the security's always very tight. And I can say that, maybe one time that we were on one of his properties in Westchester, this big notion that's going around about the women Secret Service agents or the B team, that went through my head. I cannot tell a lie. When I was at the Trump property in Westchester, New York. I think it's called Trump Westchester. And let me tell you, my brother was like, oh, what was security like? And I was like, it didn't seem like that. There was like a few girls that were kind of small, a couple of guys that looked very young, didn't look very experienced. And my thought was, he has his Mar-a-Lago team, which is probably his main team. But when he travels, maybe one or two people travel with him. I don't think he travels with the whole team. And I don't know how that works. But I know that when he gets to a new city, they contact that local city and they bring their, presidential protection detail, as far as I understand it, to join his existing team or whatever, how many he's approved for. And what's fascinating about all this is that, lo and behold, my brother's telling me, I hear he's got like, X SEALs, X this, X that. And I was like, it didn't look that tight to me. It really didn't. I saw them hanging out by the SUV, laughing, cutting up. They didn't look, like Secret Service guys usually look, kind of stoic. They don't laugh. They don't do much. They're not always very personable. I've had a few conversations with those guys, and some of them are personable. But for the most part, they're almost like the palace guards, right? You go, you make funny faces. They don't laugh, that type of thing. So that was my commentary back and forth. This was, I don't know, if not last summer, the summer before. And that was my comment to my brother. Not really weighing the gravity of that, thinking there's probably other security on his thing, or, they have all other types of security. And I remember, if you might remember me saying at the rally in the Bronx where I was complaining about security, where NYPD was kind of very nonchalant when some shots went off. Now, these shots were not, you could tell they were kind of far away, but they were shots nonetheless. And like I said, all the cops put their hand on their hip, on their holster, on their sidearm, but they didn't, nobody got alarmed. It was kind of like gunshots ring out in the Bronx pretty regularly. And it wasn't in the immediate area, but you could definitely hear the echo of it coming through the park. And again, I just thought, you would think that there'd be more of a reaction from the security there, but there just wasn't a ton of security because they didn't have all of the, what are those called? Magnometers, whatever they're called, the metal detector machines, because of the issue they had with NYPD not allowing them enough of a perimeter. And because the perimeter was smaller, they gave them less local PD and they get less local Secret Service support. It's like a complicated formula. And I'm guessing similar happened here in Pennsylvania. Now, I thought of it as people being lazy or, the politics of Eric Adams and whatnot, but never thinking that this was somehow softening his safety and security that could endanger his life or the lives of anybody else there. I was just more like, oh, they kept half the crowd out. That's really messed up. Hindsight being 2020. Wow. I'm not a retired Secret Service guy. I was a volunteer cop for 2 years. And, I did some traffic duty and helped out in court a little bit. But now I see the gravity of it. I see how serious it is. And it's something that was, I think, unforgettable, right? People aren't going to forget what happened over the weekend. Someone that was there that rushed to the aid of the firefighter that took the bullet meant for Trump, rushed to his aid along with a ER physician. And if you saw the footage, his shirt was full of blood. He's candidate for the office of state representative in Pennsylvania. He had given a speech a little bit earlier at the rally, and he's scheduled to be with us in the next few minutes. So I want you to keep it locked right here. We've got an incredible show for you tonight. Eyewitness account of what went down at the Trump rally, where there was an attempted assassination of President Donald Trump. We're also going to have some reaction from a SAC. I know, what kind of title is a SAC? But the supervisory special agent, the special agent in charge of the Secret Service. He's retired now. He'll be joining us as well to give some analysis on that at the bottom of the hour. Plus, we're going to be discussing what went on with the nomination of J.D. Vance and the pros and cons of that, and the court case that was dropped today. Lots to listen to, so make sure you keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there. See him? He's laying down. You see him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And still I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a Senate.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof again.
And you know, that's a little bit of
All right, now you just heard them yell, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. You heard a shot, then you hear the counterfire from the Secret Service snipers. Lots of questions about what's going on here. We're going to talk about that with a former Secret Service agent at the bottom of the hour. But right now, in those crucial moments where this happened, there was some eyewitnesses there, and one of them joins us now. Before I do that, I want to just set the stage with a little bit of the sound of what happened at that moment. You just heard it with the shots going off. I want to welcome our guest, Rico Elmore. He was attending the rally as a speaker, and he is a councilman for the borough of Rochester, Pennsylvania. He's a tech sergeant in the Air National Guard, vice chairman for the Beaver County Republican Committee, and he's a candidate for the state rep position in Pennsylvania. Rico Elmore, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and joy to be here.
Thank you. And I saw you on television rendering first aid with an ER physician to the heroic fireman that lost his life with the bullet that was meant to assassinate President Trump. And it was so surreal. It felt like I was watching, some sort of make-believe type of thing, but it was real life. It really happened. You were there. Walk us through it. Give us the play-by-play.
So I was sitting in the VIP section with McCormick, Sean Purnell, John David Longo, the mayor of Slippery Rock. We're sitting here and we're listening to the speech from President Trump. We're all looking up at him, and then we all had stood up for a little bit because he had mentioned Dave McCormick coming up on stage. Dave McCormick was about to, but Secret Service said, hold on, and he's continuing his speech. President Trump turns to look at the Jumbotron, and then he's speaking about immigration, and as he is speaking, you hear what sounds like firecrackers going off. And in those seconds, those split seconds, we realize that these are gunshots. I'm sitting in my seat behind Dave McCormick. I turn around and I look into the stands. There is individuals waving their arms saying, we need a medic, we need a medic. He's been shot, he's been hit. People are screaming. I mean, it was complete utter chaos. I grabbed my water bottle. I took my tie off. I ran to the barrier between between where the VIP section was and in the stands. I hopped over the barrier. I ran up into the stands to give first aid because with the military background, I know self-aid buddy care, and then trauma care as well. So I wanted to go render that to the individual. A lady there had a towel. I utilized that towel to put against the deceased head, and who I came to find out whose name was Corey, who did pass. I held onto his head to apply pressure while the ER doctor had helped me pick him up out from the sands, because he was bent over in the sands from shielding his family from the bullets. And we picked him up out of there, turned him over, started doing CPR, and the scene was it was just horrific.
Yeah, and folks, I just want to remind you, we're on with Rico Elmore, and he's talking about rendering aid to former fire chief Corey Comparator, who was killed at the Trump rally, shielding his family from what he thought was gunfire and didn't know where it was coming from. And Rico, in this moment, I found it surreal that nobody ran. Everybody kind of stayed where they were, I guess watching what was going on. I tend to think to myself, if I hear gunshots somewhere, I'm trying to get out of there. Did you find it odd that everybody stayed put, or did that just seem like first nature?
Well, you have nature versus nurture. You have flight versus fight. And in those moments, when the senses are heightened, you do not know what to do. Your body just acts.
Right.
And the reaction was to pause. The whole body was in shock, and it just paused. If it wasn't for my military training, I think that I would have been in the same boat. If it wasn't for the fact that I am always involved in community activities and with people, I would have done the same thing. There were many people that wouldn't help, that went into action, and I am grateful for them. My heart goes out to the families, but it was surreal to see people just pause there. I mean, there were people screaming, people crying, just they didn't know what to do or where to go.
Unbelievable. Folks, we're on with Rico Elmore, eyewitness to the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump, and rendered first aid to the individual that was killed. Again, that's former Fire Chief Corey Comparator. Rico Elmore, in the minute or so we have remaining, I want to thank you, obviously, for sharing this story with us and being with us tonight. And what are your final words to everybody listening? We've got listeners all across the country that are just so interested in knowing what went on. And as we see more and more video and people saying they saw the shooter and all this, what's your word to them?
I would tell everybody just to be mindful of, your surroundings, your situation that you're in. But more or less, be there for each other, be there for your family, your friends. These are tough situations, and these things do happen. They do go on. And you never know when the last moments you have with your loved ones are. So always, always express your love and care for them. I did not know Corey at all, but I seen him as someone who was in need. And regardless of who they are, what your party affiliation is, and what you believe in, I am someone who will render the aid and the needs. And I am a community individual who wants to help people. And that's all I did, was to help.
Well, God bless you, sir. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and a hero, Rico Elmore. Let everybody know how they can find you.
You can reach me out on Facebook. My name is Rico Elmore. Rico Elmore for Beaver County is on there. You can reach out to me by email at rico.elmore, number 11, at gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Rico Elmore. Folks, are coming right back with a former Secret Service agent. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A senior Secret Service source familiar with the planning of yesterday's event tells NBC News that the roof where the shooter was located was a well-known, high-priority vulnerability. It was identified just the day before during a security walkthrough. We've also just learned that there were 2 counter-sniper teams on site and that the counter-sniper did not need approval to shoot. One source telling NBC News that prior protocols were not followed. The FBI now says the alleged shooter, 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks, appears to have acted alone.
That is a report from NBC News on the vulnerability of the roof. And to discuss that, we've got a special guest lined up. He is a former United States Secret Service special agent in charge. He's got 38 years of experience in security. And I want to welcome Robert Caltabiano. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be with you.
Likewise, I'm glad you're here. So you just heard that report from NBC News talking about the vulnerability of the roof being a known threat. I've heard other former Secret Service employees commenting in their private capacity that any sniper that's trained as a sniper is good for about a shot at 500 yards. And with this building being a little more than 100 yards from Trump, it should have definitely been checked out and should have been secured and not outside of their perimeter. From your experience, how do you weigh in on all this?
Well, I think we have to look at everything as a whole. And I think the other day, our country was just millimeters away from, obviously, a national tragedy. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about snipers, the Secret Service snipers are very well trained. They constantly train for scenarios, but in the world of scenarios, you have to translate that into the real world. And sometimes there's a discord or disbelief that something may have happened, and I don't want to second guess those guys as to the quickness of their action or not. And I can tell you they're trained to go after the threat and to take out the threat once the threat is called. And I'm not sure what exactly, I'm still trying to find out what exactly happened, whether it was called or not, for these guys to take the quick action that they did. Unfortunately, it allowed this individual to obviously take a life, and almost the life of the former president. So it's a slippery slope to second guess. I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. I'll put it to you that way.
Right. Now, I guess a couple of questions here. One being a former Secret Service guy, right? I'm a radio guy. So if something goes down in radio and the world hears about it, they probably hear the official story. But I know enough people in this business to text a few of my friends and go, well, yo, what really happened? And get the scoop. Right. What are you hearing?
It's the same type of thing in the Secret Service world or in the law enforcement world. I was out traveling this weekend when it happened, and my phone started ringing, and I got texts and calls, and I immediately got to my hotel room, turned the television on, and trying to put together the shock, the sadness, the anger that I had of what had happened. And, we call it a lot of scuttlebutt. I don't want to be one of these older guys that are retired now and you want to complain about everything. But I can tell you from a lot of us former agents who have retired from the service, we're very angry. I think we're very, very dismayed as to where the agency has been and where it is now. And, I fully believe it was a catastrophic failure on the part of the Secret Service. And when I mean that, not the individuals themselves that were there. I think those people did the best they could with what they had.
Right.
And I think
enough.
No. And that is, you may not hear that. I think that is where you're going to get the pushback on. I saw Secretary Mayorkas talk about this evening, and I disagree with him extremely on that. From what I've heard from people on the ground in that area and in the Secret Service now, they are understaffed, overworked, and do not have the resources needed to really actually do their job.
Yeah, it seems that way. And I've gotten that sense from, honestly, from many former law enforcement, both federal law enforcement, local law enforcement. It seems that many things have happened, right? I think some of it has been litigious. There have been a lot of lawsuits that have kind of hamstrung some of the executives to being kind of fearful to take the action they need. I think in other cases, you have people that for political reasons or motivations, they're making certain decisions that may not be in the best interest of the organizations, whichever organization, in this case, the Secret Service. And do you think that, and I would hate to think that that's true, but I've seen all these people saying that this was a tacit way of putting Trump in harm's way by not giving him all of the Secret Service protection he needed. And do you think that was done with like political malice, or was it just done from just sheer stupidity?
Yeah, that's a great and a very strong question. I think there's a roundabout way of looking at this, and this is the first time since the 1880s, and I believe under Chester Arthur, where we have a former president who lost an election who's rerunning again for another election. And so the waters have not been tested in many ways. But also, I think you and I and everybody out there, we've become complacent at Trump rallies. And bear with me, what I mean by that is he's been doing them so long. So many thousands of people throughout the years. And it kind of seamlessly works its way out there. You've probably been to them. I've been to them. And we've been used to 10,000, 50,000 people, and they go peacefully away. And that complacency, as you know, can get you in bad places. And whether that's at a country or when you're a Secret Service agent. And I think the atmosphere that we have been in, I will tell you this, it did not surprise me. A lot of us retired guys have talked, below the voice level there and very low talks as to, I hope they don't try to do something against President Trump. Unfortunately, our fears came back to haunt us the other day.
And
I think the other thing you want to see. Yeah,
I just want to say we had a caller from that area of Pennsylvania on Friday night before I ended the broadcast for the week, and he said, "I'm fearful that they're going to try to kill Trump in Pittsburgh." And he was in Pittsburgh, and the event was outside of Pittsburgh, and it was just uncanny. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's been some of our fears for quite some time. Big arenas or big outdoor events is something that when I was in the Secret Service used to scare me. And the reason why I say that, they're so immense, and a Trump event is so immense. There's so many different parts. People don't realize that the Secret Service is in the logistics business. And what I mean by that, we have to try to help coordinate so many different moving parts from people, places, objects, things, you name it. And, a Secret Service agent's life really survives around being 100% correct all the time. And that burden of itself is very stressful. And unfortunately, the other night in Pennsylvania, the Secret Service was about 75% correct. And that's the scary, slippery slope.
Very, very. I heard somebody say they have one job, keep him alive. And they barely got it done. And while that's critical, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Folks, we're on with Robert Caltabiano, former United States Secret Service special agent in charge. He's got 38 years of security experience. We're going to come right back and get his take on what's happened to the organization, why has it gone in this direction, and is the current director of the Secret Service doing the right thing? Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our discussion on the Secret Service failure. Our guest is former special agent in charge of the United States Secret Service, Robert Caltabiano. And Robert, special agent, sir, I want you to hear this clip from the press conference immediately following the shooting, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And to everyone's chagrin, the Secret Service did not participate, and the FBI threw them under the bus. Listen to this.
From what you've been briefed on, it sounds like law enforcement only knew he was up there until shots were fired. Is that what you're hearing?
So that is the assessment at this time.
So are you surprised that a sniper was able to fire off a handful of shots at the former president? I mean,
again, we're still working through the security apparatus that the Secret Service had in place, what potentially happened. There's going to be a long investigation into exactly what took place and how the individual was able to get access to the location, what type of weapon he had. All that it is really days, weeks, and months of investigation.
He was able to get off like 4 or 5 shots.
It is surprising, but again, to get the true, all the details of that will come out later in an investigation.
Going back to the perimeter of this building, I think it's going to be really difficult for people to understand that this building with a very high vantage point, some 100 meters away from where this is happening, isn't part of that perimeter. What goes into that conversation over what is in and out and why wouldn't that be?
Again, the Secret Service really needs to answer that question.
The Secret Service has to answer that. Now, Special Agent Caltabiano, I want you to stand by. I want you to hear what Secret Service Director Cheadle had to say. Listen to this.
We sat down with Director Kim Cheadle today for an exclusive interview.
What was your reaction when you saw the events unfold on Saturday?
Shock, and then concern, obviously, for the former president. This is an event that should have never happened.
Who is most responsible for this happening?
What I would say is that the Secret Service is responsible for the protection of the former president.
So the buck stops with you?
The buck stops with me. I am the director of the Secret Service. It was unacceptable, and it's something that shouldn't happen again.
The President and Homeland Security Secretary said today they had 100% confidence in you, but there are some members of Congress calling on you to resign.
I appreciate the Secretary's comments, and we're going to continue to be transparent and communicate with people.
You plan to stay on? Absolutely.
I do plan to stay on.
So she says she's not going anywhere, and the buck stops with her. I think she gave all the right answers. I just don't know if this is going to work out. Special Agent Caltabiano, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a mess. I don't know how else to put it. I think that the course of time has eroded the special in what we call a special agent. And what I mean by that is over the years, the dismal way of recruiting people, getting the best people for the best positions has, in my view, and in many of our views out there, has drastically changed and not for the better. The way that people are being trained and the experience today, it's a very difficult field to be in. Like I said, you have to be 100% correct all the time. And that's what made it so special. There were many people that couldn't make the cut. And unfortunately today, we or the Secret Service can't get enough people to join the Secret Service. They're understaffed, overworked. And again, I will say that they did not have the adequate resources. I know the director. I knew her when she was a new agent. She is a very good person, but in my view, like she said, the buck stops with her. And the degradation of the special and special agent has been going on. It's like a slow cut that has been bleeding for quite some time. And it's time for us to stop the bleed.
Now, Special Agent, there's one more clip of audio I want you to hear. I know you're scheduled to be with us until 10:50. Any chance we could get you to stick around for a few more minutes?
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to pause right here, folks. We're coming right back with Special Agent Robert Caltabiano.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who, again, will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Now, we were just talking about the resources that the Secret Service needs to do their job. And is Director Cheadle, Kimberly Cheadle from the United States Secret Service, is she putting the emphasis where it needs to be? Well, our guest is retired Secret Service Special Agent in Charge, Robert Caltabiano. And Special Agent, I want you to hear this report from CBS News saying that the Secret Service has shifted their focus from the special and the special agent to diversity. Listen to this.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030 and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
That workforce will be pivotal for the 2024 campaign season, which for the first time includes a former president who already has lifetime protection. Agents were there when Donald Trump was arraigned in New York.
We were able to work out the details ahead of time of how that particular day was going to go, but we will always ensure the safety of all of our protectees that we have.
The service has a zero-fail mission, a mission officers are training to uphold.
So there's the report from CBS News. Special Agent Caltabiano, what do you think?
I think opportunities should be earned and not given. And when you change the way that a job or a candidate for a job is presented with it, it's only a matter of time when a catastrophe could happen. And I feel strongly about that. I think a lot of us do. Right people should get the job that they earned it. They made it through the academy. They went through the training, and not by what you look, but what you do. And unfortunately, that's a bad slope that the Secret Service has turned.
Yeah, that's a very scary thought, honestly. And there's been a lot of scrutiny on some female agents. And I don't know if it's because they were female. It just looked like they didn't know what they were doing. I think they'd be criticized just the same if they were men. It just seemed very out of sync. And again, I've never done that in my life, and I don't know how I'll react in that moment. But I do know what it looked like. From what you saw, did it look right?
But, it's not a Clint Eastwood movie like In the Line of Fire. And so no matter, I think, what would have happened, it was going to look, maybe a little bit sloppy. But the guys and gals as a whole did the best that they could for what they did. They responded to the situation. I think there's a good and bad and ugly of what happened this weekend. Let me start with the good. The good was Donald Trump. President Trump, if you notice when he was shot, he immediately brought himself down to the ground to get out of harm's way. That's a wonderful thing to see, and most likely he was probably educated and taught to do that. God forbid something was to happen. Yeah. And then number two, the agents came pretty quickly. So for all the listeners out there, you had a catastrophic event, a person shot in the crowd, 3 people shot, chaos erupting. They get to the president. You have to reassess them, make sure that there's no other damage, all within split seconds. It didn't look good, but they got the job done.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. We're out of time. Thank you, Special Agent in Charge, Robert Caltabiano, retired from the United States Secret Service. You're a gentleman, scholar, and a patriot, and I hope to have you back soon. Folks, we're coming right back. We're going to discuss J.D. Vance, VP nominee, and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, we're covering the RNC. Plus, we got Open Phone America in about an hour. The phone number for that, you know the number, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. And we've talked about the eyewitness account. We had an eyewitness of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. We've talked about the response of the Secret Service from former special agent in charge of the Secret Service. And now I want to talk about the RNC, which has been underway tonight. Some of you guys might be tuned in on television or have it on mute because you're listening to this show. And I love that you're listening. And one of the speeches, there's not a ton of speeches that I think you're missing out on. Trump doesn't speak till Thursday, but anything that's noteworthy, we're going to bring you. And a little while ago, somebody spoke that was very controversial, right? Somebody that over the weekend or even at the end of last week, a lot of people, and I'm not criticizing them in any way, right? I just understand how the whole thing is shaping. One of these people that's speaking tonight is somebody who's founded something called the Slut Walk, and someone who's been involved in hip-hop culture and is known for doing like topless modeling and stuff like that. So a lot of conservatives, Christian conservatives, were kind of up in arms saying, what is going on? Why is the RNC allowing this stuff to happen? What is the deal? What is going on here? And I understand their disdain. I do. I also understand the direction of the Republican Party. And the Republican Party and this country will never be a theocracy. I think there's a lot of people that may want that to be the case, kind of like they do in Iran, where they have the modesty police, and if you're not dressed right, they will put you in jail. But that doesn't exist in the United States, even though many of us amongst us might like that. It's not a thing. And this controversial individual is Amber Rose, a very attractive woman. So she's so pretty that she has like a haircut almost like mine, right? It's really, really short and blonde, and she's still very pretty. She's got a tattoo on her face and still manages to pull it all off, in my opinion. And whether you like her background or not, or what she does or not, she has had an awakening. She has come to her senses on the fakeness of the media, and she's jumped on the populism train that is the Trump movement, the MAGA movement, and the future of the Republican Party, despite my own disdain for populism, right? That's the direction we're headed. That's why we've got J.D. Vance as Trump's VP. So that's what we're going to talk about for this half hour. I want to talk about Amber Rose. I want to talk about J.D. Vance, and I want you to hear what she had to say at the Republican National Convention in Wisconsin moments ago.
You may be wondering why I'm up here telling you this. I'm no politician, and I don't want to be, but I do care about the truth. And the truth is that the media has lied to us about Donald Trump.
The media has lied to us about Donald Trump. The media has also done a lot of lying on Donald Trump falls on stage. Donald Trump escorted by Secret Service after loud pop. I mean, some of the most ridiculous headlines I've seen from the media this week, and I have so much less respect for them than I never had for them before. I want to get to the bottom of this. All of these topics with our good friend, Professor Nick Giordano, professor of political science at Suffolk Community College in New York. He is the host of the PAS Report podcast, and he is the higher education fellow at Campus Reform. Professor Nick Giordano, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Rich. And in full disclosure, I never modeled topless. I just want the audience to know that. Get that off my chest right away.
Well, if you're getting it off your chest, you just might be topless. Nick Giordano, I love that. Anyway, listen, thanks for being here, brother. You're always excellent. It's one of my favorites. Nick Giordano is actually a friend of mine, somebody actually I've hung out with in my private life and personally, and he's a fun time to hang out with and throw a few back with. He's a really good guy. Now, I want to get to some of your very astute analysis. And And I don't know where I weigh in on this, right? I know where my heart is. I know what's right and wrong in the eyes of the Lord Jesus Christ, my Savior. But I also know the things that I like. I like Amber Rose. Forgive me, Father, I have sinned. What do you think?
Well, speaking as a political scientist, tonight, from everything that I watched, and I watched the whole event, it wasn't aimed towards Republicans. And it shows you the calculations that Trump makes. It shows you that the savviness, the political savviness that he has, where it was more to reach out, to start broadening the base, to start bringing in voters. If you look, you had Amber Rose speaking. You also had the Spanish woman right after her that was speaking. You had a Steam Fitters Union president, the Teamsters president.
Yeah, he opened with, "I'm a proud Democrat." Did you hear that?
Yeah. Exactly, but I think that was the cunningness of the first night of the convention. We're willing to talk, we're willing to listen, we're willing to have the conversations and discussions, and so when you look at this idea of unity, I think that it's a real play at that. You had Senator Tim Scott talking about his background, growing up poor, impoverished, single-parent household. Byron Daniels, Donald, same thing. Growing up poor in a single-parent household, had the opportunity to attend private school because his mother sacrificed and worked hard. So it was really a message to ordinary Americans tonight that the understanding the plight that ordinary Americans are going through with the high prices, the high cost of food, the high cost of energy, that the labor and how things are just being shifted overseas. And I think that's what it was. I don't think it was really geared towards the Republican voters. I think it was geared towards, hey, you Democrats out there, you independents out there, maybe you want to take a look at us. Maybe you want to take a look at Trump, and maybe you might want to think about supporting him.
I think that's a really poignant perspective. And I say that because I totally agree. And my take on it is maybe a little bit nuanced, maybe the same. But it's that you're right? When you have a guy come out with this thick New York accent and say, "Hey, listen, I'm a proud Democrat, Steam Fitters Union," right? And this guy's there talking about, "I'm with Trump." And you've got Amber Rose, who's probably never voted for a Republican in her life, and she's like, whatever. All the rhetoric around who he's going to pick for vice president. Tulsi Gabbard amongst them, former vice chair of the Democrat National Committee, left that job to support Bernie Sanders for president, and then ran for president herself as a Democrat. And had a full circle, come to Jesus moment with herself. But my point is that Trump has surrounded himself with people like this because I believe his focus has always been, for MAGA, is to bring everybody to the promised land. And with bringing everybody, it's a populist movement. It's a populist, isolationist, America First movement. And some people support that, some people don't. That's fine. But I think that the point is it's mass appeal, and that appeal is appealing. And we're seeing the appeal with black voters, with Hispanic voters, with new women voters from the hip-hop world like Amber Rose that are jumping on board. And it's sending a message that there is a freshness, a vibrance, a newness in the Republican Party that hasn't existed. The critique, of course, is people saying, if we're going to become so much like the world, if we're going to become so much like the left, we're going to become so much like the Democrats, we're going to be indistinguishable. What say you?
Well, you have to differentiate yourselves, and there's always going to be policies where there's going to be differences. I mean, listen, the reality is that we have a two-party system. Yes, we have third parties, but they're relatively small and they can't succeed. But the fact is, with a two-party system, you have to have this Big Ten. You have to have this broad appeal, and that's exactly what he's doing here. And it does look like it's succeeding, right? We're seeing a percentage of the voters shift. Blacks would vote 94% for Democrats. Now we're starting to see that ebb. We're seeing Hispanics ebb. I believe the last numbers I saw with Hispanics, he's getting what George W. Bush got. Bush had about 40% of Hispanic vote. Now we're seeing that Trump's getting about the same thing. So the appeal is working. Can he keep it up? That's a different question. We have to wait and see. Is this going to turn off conservatives? I don't necessarily think so. I mean, when we look at the conservative movement as a whole, and you look at the last 4 years of Trump's presidency when he was president, he was a very conservative president. He did govern as a conservative, but he also brought in new ideas, different ideas. And I think that, I'm part of a union, in full disclosure. I'm part of the faculty association at my college. And you're
All
starting
right, well, then
to
we'll
see a
have to leave it
shift in
right
union
there. Thanks for
leadership.
joining us again. All right, take care, pal. No, go ahead. Just kidding.
Well, we're starting to see a shift in union leadership, right? Because the members are
we are.
changing. And the union leadership has to listen to their members. That's why the Teamsters Union president came out and spoke tonight. So it really is an interesting dynamic that's going on in the United States. We are seeing a generational shift with all these different coalitions now moving more towards Republicans and conservatives. And Democrats are in a bind right now.
They are. Folks, we're on with Professor Nick Giordano. If you're listening and you're like, who is this very, very smart professor guy with this New York accent? That's right, Professor Nick Giordano, professor of political science at Suffolk County Community College. He's host of the PAS Report podcast, and he's the higher education fellow over at Campus Reform. And we're going to come right back and get more analysis and commentary from him and his reaction to Trump picking United States Senator from Ohio, J.D. Vance, as his running mate. Trump-Vance 2024. I'll give you my thoughts on that as well when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our continuing coverage of the Republican National Convention in Wisconsin, live from New York. I am Rich Valdez, and moments ago, the president, the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, was officially nominated. He'll be accepting that official nomination, I believe, on Thursday, but listen to Speaker Mike Johnson make that nomination.
Pursuant to Rule 40D of the rules of the Republican Party, I formally declare President Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance as the Republican nominees for President and Vice President of the United States.
All right, so we just had that official nomination. Our guest that is joining us to give us some expert analysis is Professor Nick Giordano, professor of political science at Suffolk Community College in New York. He's the host of the PAS Report podcast and a Campus Reform higher education fellow. Professor Nick Giordano, what do you think of the nomination of J.D. Vance?
Well, I find it interesting. So, again, as a political scientist, I look at the historical aspect to the conventions. And it used to be that most people didn't really have a say in who their nominees were. The party bosses at the conventions got behind the scenes, and they decided who the candidates were. And it used to be that the vice presidential pick was very important because it could win you the Midwest or it could win you the South. I think the times have changed so much. Now it's all the RNC and the DNC is all theater. But I don't think the vice presidential pick really impacts the races all that much. I mean, I'm going to be fascinated to watch a debate between J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris. But I don't think there's a single person out there today that's saying, well, because he selected J.D. Vance, I'm either going to vote for Trump or not vote for Trump. I think that pretty much people are trying to make their determination. Do they prefer President Biden? Do they prefer the former president? And it's not going to be the vice presidents that are going to make an impact in this race.
What do you think about the rivalry that Senator Vance had in 2016 and I guess to some degree in 2020 with former President Trump?
I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think Democrats will use that. They'll trot that out there. But we all know that people change, that people morph. We all know that it's a lot different when you're being asked to be the vice president and you have a Republican president. So I don't think that's going to matter. I mean, if you look at the last with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris openly called him a racist. And now she's serving as his vice president of the United States.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really impact it. Anything that J.D. Vance said in the past, people aren't going to be like, oh, well, now I'm not going to vote for Trump. it's just not going to be impactful. I think that the Democrats, if they are going to try and attack, then maybe go with the conservative route, that it's a conservative ticket. They may have better success there, but I don't even think there. I think they're going to have a hard time. Because as you stated, J.D. Vance is more populist.
Right, and that's my question. What do you think about his populist approach? Do you think that's going to be welcomed by old school Reagan conservatives that are, thinking we have to defend Ukraine, even though we don't have to give the house away to them? I think we have a responsibility to be the world leader, where a lot of these populists are very isolationist, where they're like, no, forget it. I don't care. No more foreign aid, no more anything. Let the world police itself. We're not involved. Vacuum. United States only, America first. What do you think?
Well, I think they're torn, right? Because right now you have President Biden and the world is on fire. You have foreign governments, our adversaries all over the place that are causing unrest, trying to diminish the United States' role in the world. And President Biden hasn't really stepped up to that moment. And then you look at it and you have that populist approach that the establishment Republicans aren't really all that enthusiastic about. Let's face it, the Liz Cheneys, the Adam Kinzingers. They certainly don't want to see a more populist ticket because they are the neocons. But it's about the people. The people are the ones that are going to go out and vote. And I think after the debacle in Afghanistan, I think that was a huge turning point in America, where 20 years of war, 2,400 soldiers killed, tens of thousands wounded, nearly $2 trillion spent. The whole time the bureaucracy was telling us that they were making progress, that the Afghan military can hold the country, that the Afghan government was stable. And what we announced within 1 week, we didn't even fully withdraw, the Taliban recaptured the country. I think that really opened up a lot of people's eyes and said, enough of this. We're done. It doesn't work. We failed. It was an embarrassment to the United States that you spent 20 years of war with Afghanistan, and the Taliban is better armed and equipped today than it was prior to 9/11. That was an embarrassment. So it's really going to come down to the people.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. And I want to switch gears quickly before we run out of time with about a minute to go. What do you think about this whole assassination attempt on Trump over the weekend?
It's not something that actually surprised me. I mean, obviously, when you watch the video, it's shocking. And it's shocking that it's not that the shooter missed, it's that Trump tilted his head. You're talking about the grace of God right there. But it doesn't surprise me when you hear the political rhetoric that's been going on, when you're constantly demonizing people as the next Hitler, as someone that's going to end democracy, that there's never going to be another American election. Sooner or later, something was going to happen like this. I think the biggest story, though, is the failures of the Secret Service. I mean, this was a catastrophic failure, and people need to be held accountable. People need to be fired. We cannot have this in the United States. The shot never should have gotten off in the first place. And I think we have to look at our bureaucracy because we are failing top to bottom. There is so much incompetence. And we see when there is incompetence, these are the things that will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I laugh because not because it's funny, but because it's like, wow, incredulity. I can't believe we're at this point. Professor Nick Giordano, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. And I thank you for being here. I wish we had more time. We'll have you back really soon to catch up again. All right. That means he's gone. We're coming back, folks, with your calls and more at the top of the next hour. Plus, the Trump case decided. I'm Rich Valdez.
So glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our live coverage of the Republican National Convention in Wisconsin. And it's Rich Valdez live from New York. And I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another big story that came out today. Regarding the Trump documents case. There's a report from NBC News. Check this out.
It was already indefinitely on hold, but tonight, case closed. A federal judge in Florida today handing Donald Trump a sweeping, unexpected legal windfall, dismissing the charges he'd faced for hoarding classified documents at his Mar-a-Lago estate after leaving the White House and then allegedly obstructing the government's efforts to get them back.
Violations of those laws put our country at risk.
Judge Eileen Cannon finding the appointment of that top prosecutor, Special Counsel Jack Smith, improper. Cannon, a Trump appointee, concluding in a 93-page decision that Smith's appointment by Attorney General Merrick Garland violated the Constitution, as Smith wasn't nominated by the president or confirmed by the Senate. That reasoning, a dramatic departure from every other court that's looked at the issue. The former president pleaded not guilty to the charges last summer. Today, Mr. Trump described as very happy with the court victory, according to a source who spoke with him, as he called for the dismissal of his 3 other pending cases. Lester asking President Biden to weigh in on the ruling.
Judge Cannon dismissed the documents case, as you may have heard, in Mar-a-Lago. Can I first get your reaction to that?
I'm not surprised.
And Laura, the Justice Department saying late tonight it plans to appeal.
Yes, that's right, Lester. The Justice Department giving the special counsel Jack Smith the authorization, the green light to appeal, saying Judge Cannon's decision today, quote, deviates from all other courts.
All right, that's the report from NBC News. I've heard enough of that. We got the meat and potatoes of it. Jack Smith was unconstitutionally appointed. This was an argument made by former General Ed Meese, by former General Michael Mukasey, the great one Mark Levin as well, through Landmark Legal, and others who made amicus briefs to the court, which Judge Cannon allowed to be heard. And ultimately, in a 9-page ruling, says, yes, that's correct. This guy is not official. And I love that. I love it. I think it's a great thing when the good guys win. Again, the federal judge presiding over the classified documents case against former President Donald Trump in Florida has dismissed the prosecution. I want to get to the bottom of this with the senior legal fellow and manager of the Supreme Court and Appellate Advocacy Program at the Ed Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation, Zach Smith. No relationship to Jack Smith, but Zach Smith, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me on this evening, and absolutely no relationship to Jack Smith.
It's radio. We got to stress everything.
Absolutely.
All right. So Zach Smith is with Heritage Foundation, and you're a former assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Florida, and you have many other accolades under your belt. I want to get your opinion on the judge's ruling today. A lot of her critics have said she did this because she was appointed by Trump. She did this because she's outside of the norm in formally hearing and allowing external attorneys to argue their amicus briefs instead of just submitting them to the court for her to consume, digest, and consider. What are your thoughts on that type of critique?
Well, look, I think Judge Eileen Cannon deserves credit for having the courage to issue this ruling when she likely knew she was going to get a lot of blowback for it. In fact, she heard oral arguments on this very issue several weeks ago. At the time, many of her critics lambasted her in the media, basically painted her as a partisan hack, which I think is a very unfortunate and unfair characterization. This is exactly why we have life tenure for our federal judges. We want them to be able to make difficult decisions free from political influence, and yet today, unfortunately, too many of our judges don't have the courage to do that. And so at the end of the day, whether you agree with Judge Cannon's legal analysis, which I happen to think was very robust, she should be applauded for having the courage to reach this difficult decision. But more importantly, from a legal standpoint, I think her decision was very well-founded. Keep in mind, just weeks ago, Justice Clarence Thomas on the U.S. Supreme Court in the Trump immunity case, he wrote a separate concurring opinion distinctly highlighting this very issue, urging the lower federal courts who are hearing Donald Trump's prosecutions to consider this issue of whether Jack Smith was constitutionally appointed. And so the idea that this is somehow unfounded or baseless, that's just not true. The fact that officers of the United States have to be appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, which Jack Smith was not, that is a constitutional requirement. And again, kudos to Judge Cannon for having the courage to issue this opinion.
Folks, we are on with former Assistant United States Attorney Zach Smith, no relation to Jack Smith. Now, I guess I have a follow-up question for you, but I'm going to take a quick pause and come back and ask you the question before we come back. Folks, if you want to join the conversation, Open Phone America will be starting at the top of the next hour. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Of course, we continue our live coverage of the RNC convention in Wisconsin and our discussion on the big news today that a federal judge has dismissed this case, the documents case, stating that Zach Smith is not a constitutional officer and was acting outside of the purview or in the purview of independent counsel, which he was not because he was appointed special counsel illegally or extra constitutionally. So we're going to continue that conversation straight ahead with our guest, Zach Smith. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And again, we continue our coverage of the Republican National Convention. As there's more to report from there, we will bring that to you. We're also going to continue our discussion on the documents trial and, of course, Open Phone America, which is coming up at the top of the hour. 833-482-5337 is the phone number for that, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, tomorrow we have the chairman of the co-chair of the RNC, Michael Whatley, will be joining us, as well as some delegates that are voting in the convention tomorrow evening as well. So stay tuned for our robust coverage of the RNC. Now, back to my question with our guest. Our guest is Zach Smith, no relationship to Jack Smith. Zach Smith is a senior legal fellow and the manager of the Supreme Court and Appellate Advocacy Program at the Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. No, that's not a mouthful. And he's a former assistant United States attorney. Zach Smith, my question here is, okay, so Judge Eileen Cannon shows bravery, courage, patriotism, scholarship, all of the above. She's judicious and she does the right thing. She makes this ruling. It's 9 pages. Everybody's bravo. However, she's not the end-all, be-all. They can appeal this. They can take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I'm already hearing this evening that Jack Smith has received permission to appeal this decision to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. But that's not the only option. The Biden administration, the Biden Justice Department, could choose to dismiss the charges, or essentially not appeal this dismissal and then re-indict Donald Trump via a properly appointed prosecutor like a United States attorney. But the important thing to keep in mind here is that all of these actions are going to take time. This is not going to be resolved overnight. And I think what should be crystal clear to everyone at this point is that this document trial certainly is not going to be anywhere close to resolution before the election. Neither is the Washington, D.C. case, where these same types of issues will likely have to be resolved. The Manhattan prosecution of Donald Trump, that is also on pause right now. The judge had to move the sentencing. He was supposed to sentence Donald Trump on July 11th. That didn't happen because he's having to work through some issues related to the Supreme Court's recent immunity decision. And then, of course, the RICO prosecution in Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, being brought by Fani Willis is an absolute disaster from top to bottom. And right now, the Georgia courts are deciding whether or not Fani Willis should be completely removed from even prosecuting that case at all. And so all of these cases are a standstill for now, and it should be obvious that none are going to be resolved before the election.
Now, what do you think the likelihood of that, making it to the Supreme Court and then not agreeing with Judge Cannon? I know that's a crystal ball.
Well, it is a crystal ball. I joke my crystal ball is broken these days. It's a little cloudy, to say the least. But look, other courts have decided this issue differently. A similar issue, came up with Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. The key difference to keep in mind between the Special Counsel Jack Smith, who's prosecuting Donald Trump, and the Special Counsel who's investigating Joe Biden, or the Special Counsel who is investigating Hunter Biden, these other Special Counsels are U.S. attorneys, or were U.S. attorneys at the time of their appointment, who were presidentially appointed, confirmed by the Senate, who are stepping into the role of these special prosecutors, essentially. That wasn't the case with Jack Smith. And so because of that, Jack Smith's case does present some unique arrangements to it. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. Again, Judge Tanya Chutkin, the federal district court judge overseeing the D.C.-based prosecution brought by Jack Smith, will likely be asked to address this issue. She may come out differently than Judge Cannon, and then, of course, that would tee up a conflict that would make it much more attractive for the Supreme Court to weigh in and resolve this issue.
Got it. Now, I guess my next question is, what about all the rest of the cases? If this stands that Jack Smith is illegal, right? I'm going to call him an illegal prosecutor. If that's the case, then does that mean he's out and all those cases are out? Or is there an in-between, like you mentioned, maybe bringing him to an AUSA or a United States attorney in whatever district?
Yeah, this would affect the federal prosecutions, and so it could potentially affect the D.C.-based prosecution as well. This appointment clause issue would not affect either the Georgia case or the Manhattan case, because those were brought by local state district attorneys. Those are prosecutions nominally under state law in New York and Georgia, respectively. Now, what's interesting about both of those state-based prosecutions is that the immunity decision the Supreme Court recently released could impact even those state level prosecutions. Again, the Supreme Court said that Donald Trump has immunity for official actions that he takes while in office, and that he doesn't enjoy immunity for actions he takes as a private citizen or as a candidate. But importantly, particularly for the Manhattan prosecution, the Supreme Court also said that any evidence introduced in trial, even if it's based on Donald Trump's private conduct, could not be based on official actions he took while president. And certainly some of the testimony, some of the evidence that came in at that New York trial was arguably based on his official actions while president. So that's an issue that Donald Trump's lawyers have raised. That's an issue that Judge Juan Merchan, the judge overseeing that New York prosecution, is going to take under consideration. And I think it adds just yet another issue that the appellate courts may have to resolve. And look, I don't think it should be controversial to say that Judge Juan Merchan made many questionable decisions during that Manhattan trial. Everything from the jury charge, the instruction on the applicable law he gave to the jury, saying they didn't have to be unanimous as to the underlying crime, to some of the testimony he allowed to come in, particularly the testimony from Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen that was very prejudicial to Donald Trump and yet not really relevant to the charges, and also some of the testimony he excluded as well. He didn't allow Brad Smith, a former federal election commissioner, to testify that even if what the prosecution alleged was true, that wouldn't constitute a federal campaign finance violation. So look, there's a lot of issues the appellate courts will have to work out in that New York-based prosecution, but certainly none of them are going very well for the prosecutors right now.
Folks, Zach Smith, senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. In particular, he's the manager of the Supreme Court and Appellate Advocacy Program at the Ed Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. And he's also the author of the book, Rogue Prosecutors, How Radical Soros Lawyers Are Destroying America's Communities. And he wrote that with Charles Stimson, who's also from Heritage. And we're going to wrap up with him straight ahead. You've been a wealth of information. I really appreciate you straightening this out for us. And, of course, at the top of the next hour, it's Open Phone America, and we're going to have a surprise guest calling us from the RNC in Wisconsin to give us an update on what just happened and how they've just wrapped up and what we've missed, if anything. But we've got it covered here. So, folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with Zach Smith.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you up to speed on everything that's going on in America at night. And the Republican National Convention is wrapping up. We'll be getting an update on that shortly at the top of the next hour. Again, Donald Trump alive and well, making a surprise early appearance at the convention. And, of course, a victory lap, right? He's getting nominated as president. He just won a case in court today with Judge Eileen Cannon dismissing the case on the grounds, the documents case, where they said he stole all these classified presidential records, which, in my opinion, were his to take with him. And Eileen Cannon said that the prosecutor bringing the case was a fake, phony fraud. In my words, not hers. And we've been getting analysis on that from Zach Smith, senior legal fellow and manager of the Supreme Court and Appellate Advocacy Program at the Ed Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. And Zach is the co-author of Rogue Prosecutors, How Radical Soros Lawyers Are Destroying America's Communities. He also wrote that with Charles Stimson. Now, Zach Smith, no relation to Jack Smith. How do people get a copy of the book?
Sure, you can get it on Amazon, the Barnes & Nobles, or wherever else you buy your books. I hope everyone will consider checking it out. And, what we do in the book, we lay out the background of this so-called progressive prosecutor movement. We talk about its ideological underpinnings. We talk about who's funding it. George Soros is certainly prominent among those individuals, but he's not the only one. And then we talk about 8 different rogue prosecutors who have been the most egregious in terms of not prosecuting crimes, in terms of letting chaos and havoc reign in their cities. And if your listeners are interested, we spend an entire chapter highlighting Alvin Bragg and his problematic soft-on-crime policies. And when you look at those policies, consider that he ordered his prosecutors not to prosecute most misdemeanors, to water down felonies wherever possible, and then compare that to the prosecution that he brought against Donald Trump, where he essentially bootstrapped 34 misdemeanors into felonies using a very novel legal theory. I think the entire process becomes even more problematic and really hones in that we need to get back to the basic blocking and tackling of putting police on the streets, allowing them to do their jobs, and then prosecuting criminals and holding them appropriately accountable.
Yeah, I always say we have to put an end to the pro-crime, progressive prosecutors that coddle the criminals. Zach Smith, let everybody know how they can find you online.
Yeah, you can follow me on X, formerly Twitter, @TZSmith. That's @TZSmith. Or you can go to heritage.org and see everything I've written, as well as all the great stuff my colleagues have as well.
Outstanding, Zach Smith. I really appreciate you staying up late with us. And I want to give you a preemptive welcome back, the next legal issue we have to tackle. Godspeed, my friend.
Well, I'd love to come back. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And folks, there's more to come straight ahead. I am Rich Valdez, Open Phone America, RNC coverage, and more coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you this Monday night. Our phone number, if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And we're bringing you special coverage of the Republican National Convention. It is underway as of today. And what a weekend, right? You had the World Cup, not the World Cup, Copa America, where Argentina faced off against Colombia. And, man, what a game that was. Of course, you had the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Wow, what a weekend. So much going on. The lawsuit, or I should say the case, the prosecution by Jack Smith, that was dropped. And one of the highlights from the nomination tonight of Donald Trump was the official nomination from the Speaker of the House that happened a little while ago. Listen to this.
Pursuant to Rule 40D of the rules of the Republican Party, I formally declare President Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance as the Republican nominees for President and Vice President of the United States.
And again, that is, President Trump saying thank you. He's going to officially accept that nomination on Thursday. Lots of more delegates pledging their support and speeches and all sorts of shenanigans and activities that are planned. And I want to get a recap on some of what went down today as they've come to a close for tonight. From one of our favorites on this program, Jennifer Kerns. You guys know her. She's the author of The Real War on Women, and she was spokeswoman of the California Republican Party. She's our guest right now. Jen Kerns, welcome back.
Hey, great to be with you, Rich.
Thanks for being a special once-in-a-blue guest in the third hour of the program. I might even ask you to come back later in the week. You don't have to say yes, but I hope you do. But I want to get an idea of what is going on in Wisconsin. I know it's packed to the hilt. And again, normally these things are not very action-packed, right? They're pretty mundane. This one is rock star status because Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, was the subject of an attempted assassination not 48 hours ago. And here he is accepting the nomination. This is a big deal. It's historic. It's one of a kind. Tell us more, Jen Kerns.
You know, everything in Trump fashion always happens ahead of schedule and under budget, and tonight is no exception. I do some TV booking and radio booking for a lot of the RNC surrogates, as you know. So, I do a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. So I always say, if you really want to know what's happening backstage, feel free to call me. and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So really it's been a whirlwind since Saturday, of course. The attempted assassination of President Trump really kicked off, just a whole sea change of media at the RNC convention. Saturday night, we started, changing all of the bookings, all of the people who were set to kick off the RNC coverage on Sunday with the major networks. All of those people were completely blown out and replaced by law enforcement, first responders, military folks, people who have, presidential history in their, quiver of their, arrows. And then Monday, we were told that they were also going to move up. Trump team was also going to move up the VP pick announcement, which was not supposed to happen until Wednesday, Rich. That's the night that the VP candidate usually steps up, accepts the nomination. But everything on Saturday really changed things. And that is how the Trump operation works. That's how it works in Trump world. If they see an opportunity, they're going to change on a dime to change the media lineup, to change the story. in the media, and that's exactly what they did. And look, it bodes well for the campaign. We're some 100 days out from the election, if you can believe that or not. All of these changes show us a couple of things, Rich, in politics. The old guard of the Republican Party is gone. The guard that would have said, oh, no, we can't change the night that the VP pick accepts his nomination. That's not supposed to happen until Wednesday. And, oh, President Trump can't show his face until Thursday, the night he accepts his nomination. All of that is out the window. The Donald Trump organization moves on a dime, turns on a dime, and has the ability to course correct and adjust to anything. And that is a hugely competitive strategic advantage, Rich, against the Biden campaign, which is ancient, it's old, it's in bed before 8 p.m., it can barely make its way up Air Force One steps, and it can barely walk across the West Lawn. So advantage here all to the Republicans at the RNC convention.
Wow. You said so much there and such great points that you made. Then the first one being, I remember on a Friday, I think I was asking the team in the control room, and I was like, when is he accepting the nomination? Because, again, I was thinking in Trump terms, right? And I'm thinking, Trump's not going to wait till Thursday to show up because he's the show, right? How do you have a show for 3 days and then Trump shows up, right? In my head, I was like, I don't know how that works. And that's why I asked, when is he going to do it? And they confirmed, yeah, no, he's accepting on Thursday. And in my head, I was like, I just don't see how that works. And because that's how he rolls, right? And the J.D. Vance thing, though, that one I don't think is so much of a Trumpism as it is, again, my gut, right? Like you, I've been behind the scenes as a radio producer for some years and now as a radio host. And I know a few people, I shake a few leaves, I get text messages and stuff like that. I didn't get any text messages about this, but I'm thinking that somebody found out and was going to say something, and they said, no, we got to say it first, and that's why they moved it up. What do you think?
That could possibly be. That could be. We saw the video that somebody took outside of J.D. Vance's home, showing the motorcade pulling up. Of course, it said local PD on the markings of the actual cars, but we know that the two Suburbans on the inside of that motorcade were most likely Secret Service. So that could certainly be a hint. Look, I just think it's part of the dynamic, Trump campaign, the way that they maneuver. They see an opportunity and they go get it. Lee Greenwood, I'll give you one example of the behind the scenes making of the sausage. Lee Greenwood, which has been one of my clients, was supposed to not be on stage performing God Bless the USA until tomorrow night. He was part of the main stage entertainment scheduled for Tuesday night. And he also got moved to tonight because they said Trump is going to make a surprise appearance tonight. So all of this really was, sort of coordinated at the last minute. And look, there's no one better. What a show that was. Lee Greenwood got up on stage and really ad-libbed his introduction of Donald Trump. These two are extraordinarily close. They've known each other for 25, maybe 35 years. Not just through politics, but they first met in the pageant world at the Miss Universe pageant. Lee Greenwood's wife, Kim, is a former Miss USA contestant, former, a pageant director, and she's known Donald Trump actually longer than Lee Greenwood has, and they just think the world of Donald Trump and what a kind man he is throughout the years. And so here's Lee Greenwood on stage, kind of ad-libbing, found out just about an hour before that he was going to be up on stage, warming up his voice, trying to, get stage ready. It's just all part of, again, a really dynamic RNC convention that we're going to see. And you have to ask yourself, Rich, if all of this was moved to night one, Monday night of the RNC convention, what is next in store for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? It really is going to be a spectacular display.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Folks, we're on with Jen Kerns, who dissed us on debate night because she went on a date, and we're going to forgive her for that. But she's with us tonight in a surprise cameo appearance in the third hour of the show where we normally don't do guests. And I am going to get to your calls, you, the American people, straight. I see the calls are piling up, and I'm going to get to you. I promise not to leave you on hold. I'm going to get to you. But, Jen Kerns, there's a clip of audio I want you to hear, and it's from a fellow New Yorker who is speaking at the RNC. Listen to this.
President Trump had the backbone to open the doors to this Republican convention, and that's unprecedented. No other nominee in the race would have invited the Teamsters into this arena. Now, you can have whatever opinion you want, but one thing is clear. President Trump is a candidate who is not afraid of hearing from new, loud, and often critical voices. And I think we all can agree, whether people like him or they don't like him, in light of what happened to him on Saturday, he has proven to be one tough SOB.
So there you have all these people. You got union bosses from all over the place. I remember seeing the guy from New York, the steam fitters guy. He was like, "I'm a proud Democrat, but I'm here for Trump." You know, it was great. And excuse me, there's so many interesting people. Amber Rose, all sorts of interesting people coming out on Monday. Like you said, what's in store for tomorrow and the next day. But Jen Kerns, what do you think of the direction of the Republican Party? This the MAGA movement, which I think has taken over the Republican Party. Populism has taken over the Republican Party. America First or isolationism has taken over in many ways. And I think J.D. Vance embodies a lot of that. Your thoughts?
This is incredible momentum, Rich. This is historic as well. This is the first time the president of a major labor union has spoken at an RNC convention in 140 plus years of history. This is a moment. That, coupled with the picking of J.D. Vance as someone who wrote basically an American love letter from the working class of America to Washington, D.C., and actually brought his Ohio values to Washington, D.C., not the other way around. This shows me that the Trump campaign is banking on the American worker in order to win this election, and it is historic and it's significant. They are also showing us that they're not going to leave any swing votes on the table. They're going to go fully after the Democrat working class, blue-collar voters. They're going to go after the independent swing voters. And this is a formula that I used for many years to win tens of millions of votes in the state of California. Even as a raging conservative with a capital C that I am, I was actually really, really good friends and still am with Steve Smith, who runs the California Labor. It's called Cal Labor out there. But it's, they're major players in every election. And look, this is what Trump is finding out, that you have to talk to people who may not agree with you and who may critique you from time to time. And Trump is really showing what a dynamic, open, humble person he is, because think about this, Rich. J.D. Vance was once a critic of Donald Trump, and now the guy is on the VP ticket. This speaks volumes for Trump. It speaks volumes to where, his ego has evolved to. He is really a guy who loves to win. He loves America, and he's banking it all on the American worker here.
Well, Jen Kerns live on the ground in Wisconsin at the Republican National Convention. I want to thank you for being with us. I hope to, tap your shoulder again sometime this week to have you on again and get another update from you before the convention's over. And Godspeed to you.
Hey, thank you so much, Rich. Happy to join anytime.
Thank you. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, to the phones we go. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to go to New Mexico, KOBE. Jim in Las Cruces. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, Rich.
Hey.
I was curious after the horrible assassination attempt, and I thought, a while back, I wonder what Nancy Pelosi has to say about this. what Chuck Schumer has to say about this, what Hillary Clinton has to say about this. I'm sure they'll have something conciliatory, like, they're glad President Trump wasn't, successfully assassinated or something like that. And lo and behold, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi did have something nice and conciliatory to say, and Chuck Schumer did too. But nothing but radio silence from Hillary Clinton. She wanted to talk about her new book tour and how Trump shouldn't be cozying up to Viktor Orban, but nothing about the assassination, which makes me sort of think she's disappointed in the marksmanship skills of the young man that was on that building. But that's all I wanted to say.
Well, Jim, it's interesting. As the weekend has continued, right, and we're in the week now, but I've been looking at all sorts of social media things out there, and there was a video of Jack Black at some sort of Hollywood function, a concert. I really couldn't make it out, but somebody was, I think, performing on stage, and he comes out and he makes a joke about, it's a shame that they missed or something like that. And people were saying, that's really messed up. You shouldn't do that. Of course, those are Trump people like me and like you and like others. But the reality is, free speech is still free speech, right? And just because it's a joke I don't find funny doesn't mean that it's not a joke others find funny. And, while I might not do it, I could see it happening. And I try always put the shoe on the other foot. And I could totally see myself being at a party somewhere and somebody making a joke if there was an assassination attempt on Barack Obama, let's say, or even on Joe Biden. I could totally see somebody saying something similar, like, I can't believe they missed. Jeez, what luck we have, that we got the blind marksman and whatever. I think that just comes with the territory. I can't ever expect Nancy Pelosi to say something nice about anybody. Not even when she's giving Kamala Harris a compliment, it's a backhanded compliment. She's vice president. She's not expected to do much, right? When she's talking about her dear friend, Senator Joe Biden, who became president, what does she say? I think the other day she said something like, look, that's up to him, right? They were asked a question, and she was like, he's the president. That's up to him. She had nothing nice to say other than the few things that she said. So I understand some people are just like that. They're just, kind of malcontent, and they never have anything good to say. Joe Biden even didn't have a ton to say, and we'll play the audio of him when we come back of Biden's comments reacting to Trump, and he did an interview with Lester Holt. And that one was very telling. In the interview with Lester Holt, he's kind of stuttering, not because he has a stuttering problem, but because he got tripped up. Holt is like, you mentioned on a call that we need to put Trump in the bullseye. Do you regret it? And he's like, and it's again, I laugh because it was funny to listen to. The whole thing is not funny. It's a very serious matter. Trump's missing a piece of his ear because somebody tried to murder him, and somebody did, in fact, die with the bullet meant for Trump. A very courageous, heroic fireman, former fire chief Corey Comparator. May he rest in peace, and my prayers of strength and consolation for his family. But Jim in Las Cruces, New Mexico, thank you for your call. KOBE, your calls and more coming up. Arkansas, Pennsylvania, Montana, California, Delaware, and more. Rich Valdez, don't go anywhere.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, let's talk about the conversation this has started, and it's really about language, what we say out loud and the consequences of those. You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that.
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there's very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. Focus. I mean, there's a whole range of things that, look, I'm not the guy that said, I want to be a dictator on day one. I'm not the guy that refused to accept the outcome of the election. I'm not the guy who said that won't accept the outcome of this election automatically. You can't only love your country when you win. And so the focus was on what he's saying, and I mean, the idea.
But have you taken a step back and done a little soul searching on things that you may have said that could incite people who are not balanced?
Well, I don't think, look, how do you talk about the threat to democracy, which is real, when a president says things like he says? Do you just not say anything because it may incite somebody? Look, I have not engaged in that rhetoric. Now, my opponent is engaged in that rhetoric. He talks about there'll be a bloodbath if he loses, talking about how he's going to forgive all the, actually, I guess, suspend the sentences of all those who were arrested and sentenced to go to jail because of what happened in the Capitol. I'm not out there making fun of, like, remember the picture of Donald Trump when Nancy Pelosi's husband was hit with a hammer, joking about it?
Well, there he goes, rambling and rambling and rambling. That is Joel Baboso Biden doing what he does best, babiando. And what's interesting here is he seems, he stumbles. He's like, well, no, he's the one who said whatever, becoming very defensive very quickly. And these are the moments where he comes across as so unpresidential. I think you have to assume leadership at some point, and you have to, credit to her, Ms. Cheadle, the director of the Secret Service, who said that the buck stops with her and that this has to be on her. That's what Biden needed to say. He needed to say, look, I said it, and I may not have meant it in that context, but at this point, I can see that this may not have been the best choice of words, and I apologize. I apologize for using that language. I don't think that contributed to anything, but I would hate to think that it did, and I'm going to own up to it. And I want to beat Donald Trump at the ballot box. I do not want to murder Donald Trump, right? Just go out there and tell the truth, if that's the truth. But he doesn't do that, and you know why he doesn't do it? Because he can't. Why? Because him and his friends, Maxine Waters, actor Johnny Depp, singer Madonna, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer that he brought up, Ellen DeGeneres, Kamala Harris, who I call Que Mala Eres, Joe Biden himself, and Rick Wilson, the founder of the Lincoln Project, the anti-Trump group of Republicans. They said some of the most egregious things, and we have a little clip of audio of what they said. And listen carefully to what they said. These are the most vile threats, calls for violence, very, very heavy stuff that Republicans have never said. Trump has never said anything other than we have to fight, right? They're saying a lot more than that. Listen to this.
We'll go and take Trump out tonight. Take him out now.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Please get up in the face of some Congress people.
People will do what they do.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price.
Trumpers, be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them pay.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
Then punch him in the face.
That I thought he should have punched him in the face.
Feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school.
If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym.
So Biden wants to take him behind the gym and punch him in the face. Rick Wilson from the Lincoln Project says that the donor class is going to have to put a bullet in Donald Trump. Right? Nancy Pelosi I forget what she said. Maxine Waters said, we got to take him out. We got to take him out right now. Now, of course, their acolytes are going to defend them and say, no, look, they were talking about this figuratively, politically. They meant electorally. Well, did they? Because nobody's killing them, right? Somebody did beat up Nancy Pelosi's husband with a hammer, some naked man that was in his house. But outside of that, nobody's trying to kill those people except for Kavanaugh. Somebody did try to go kill Kavanaugh after good old Chuck Schumer said what he said, that you're going to feel the price, you're going to pay the price. People don't realize that they have influence, right? The original influencers are people like this, politicians, actors. These people have influence over public opinion. And the president of the United States, let me tell you something. Donald Trump has said a lot of things, right? When he called Rosie O'Donnell a pig, this, that, he said a lot of things. But I've never heard him call for people to be dead. Never. You know, it's a disgrace. Right? He'll say things are a disgrace. Listen to what Joe Biden said. Right? Listen to this. Another 4 years of Donald Trump is deadly serious. Project 2025 is deadly serious. Look up more about it at joebiden.com. This is a tweet that he put out. Here's another one. Biden, I'm prepared to fight for it. Are we prepared to fight for that? I know I am, and I will. Yeah, that one could be political. Sure. Let's see. Justice Sotomayor warned us in her dissent that based on the majority decision, Trump could take out his opponents, take bribes, and lead a coup while president, and be immune to being held accountable. This is on July 5th, a week ago. He really could become the dictator that he promised to be on day one. This is what Joe Biden's tweeting out. Is it any wonder that somebody susceptible says, hey, I'm going to take you up on that? Now, can I blame Joe Biden for being stupid? Yes. Can I blame him for what happened to Trump? I don't know. I don't think I can. I don't think it helped in any way. I don't think it helped at all. Here's another one from Joe Biden. Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. Same thing on the 5th of July. And we cannot let him win. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, talking to folks about what's at stake this election. Tune in. That's Joe Biden. Joe Biden again. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. Because of yesterday's decision, the American people will have to do what the court should have been willing to do, but will not. What does that sound like to you? Again, this is July 2nd, 10:01 a.m. The American people will have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. I'm going to tweet this out in case you didn't see it. It's on his timeline. Got 4.5 million views. When you are reckless like this and you reiterate Donald Trump is a threat to this nation, he's a threat to our freedom, he's a threat to our democracy, he's literally a threat to everything America stands for. Now, somebody's going to say, you know, Rich, that's very, very rich of you, very hypocritical. You get on this microphone every day and you talk trash about Joe Biden. If somebody hurt Joe Biden, can we blame you? No. I just say he's a blundering old fool that shouldn't be president. His policy hurts the economy. I've never said that he threatens our democracy. And if I did, it was a mistake because I believe he's a threat to our constitutional republic, right? His policies are a threat. I don't believe that he needs to be killed. I've never called for violence against anyone. I've never said I want to take him behind the bleachers and punch him in the nose. I've never said if you see politicians in the street, get in their face. Matter of fact, when people call here and they say, I think we're going to have a civil war, there's no other way around, I tell them I don't think it's happening. Because I believe in America. I believe in people. I believe that some people go, they're overboard. But ultimately, I believe that people want to do the right thing. So you let me know. Am I too optimistic? Is it pie in the sky for me? Your thoughts, your calls, and more coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. I want to get your thoughts on everything that's going on in America at night. Let's go to Peggy, Akron, Ohio, WNIR. Peggy, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, I just wanted to say I'm a registered Democrat. I absolutely hate and abhor everything that is going on. And I really, 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 truly wish that everybody would dial down the rhetoric.
Yeah.
And dial it down now.
Listen, I'm with you. I think rhetoric is great, but it doesn't need to be like this. And again, to be very frank, I can't make any examples. I have not seen examples of Trump saying things that are hurtful to the safety and well-being of his opponents. I just never seen it. He calls for us to get rid of them electorally, and this is why I take exception to when they try to make him out to being, some sort of Hitler that, should be assassinated. Right? That's the caricature they paint, and you're right. That's dangerous. So I can't say everybody. In particular, I'd say Democrats. I've never heard J.D. Vance say, we need to go and beat these Democrats up. I've just never heard that. I wish that were the case, but it's just not the case. Peggy from Akron, thank you for being so level-headed and a common-sense Democrat. I appreciate your call. Big shout-out to WNIR. Let us continue. Where do we go here? I want to go to David, San Francisco, California, streaming on richvaldez.com. David, go right ahead.
Oh, thanks, Rich. On a whole different topic, I was more interested in what happened over at the event in Pittsburgh. But it cracked me up, though, when I heard you do your interview at the end of the last hour. Did that guest really say that he was from, or I think he said that the Heritage Foundation has a section dedicated to Ed Meese?
Oh,
Ed
yeah.
Meese, who did the cover-up for Iran-Contra that brought crack to America, that we lost billions and billions of dollars secretly throughout the world, and all of those weapons became the guerrilla wars of and coups.
Yeah, that Ed Meese. I mean, it seems like you have a little bit of your history twisted, but for the sake of all the rest of the people listening to the show that don't want to talk about Ed Meese, that want to talk about the news of today, do you have any comments on what we've been talking about this evening, David?
Well, yeah, and it gets into the rally. I've been in theater management for 35, 40 years.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at, you're booking a hall, and you book that hall and you try to make sure that every part of it is covered. Who's going to wipe down the seats? Who's going to clean up afterward? Who's going to provide security? Donald Trump, since 2015 in the political realm, has rarely paid off any city that he hired a venue. He hires the venue, then he sticks them for some claimed defect, and then he doesn't pay him off. Look at Tulsa. Look at the
Is that really rally. What you want to talk about?
Well, yeah, and it comes to the security that he has probably got a codicil in his security contract with them about who was going to be responsible for the security, and it's Donald Trump that was responsible for the bad security. Look at. Do
you have any idea what you're talking about? I mean, Donald Trump is protected by the United States Secret Service. This is not an option, right? This is not something you don't get to say, oh, no, I don't want your security. You get to say, I don't want all that security. You can get 2 security members instead of 4. But ultimately, they have to protect you because you know secrets about the United States. That's just how that works. That's literally the case. This isn't an optional thing. He's a former president, just like Jimmy Carter, just like George Bush. That's how that works. So I try to give you enough rope to hang yourself here, and it looks like you do it every time. The idea that Trump is responsible for his own security as president, as a former president, even as candidate, he had Secret Service protection, is just crazy. You can manage all the theaters you want, and that's great. But ultimately, that's not how that works. So I don't know if you're trying to make the case that, he doesn't pay his bill. I really don't understand the purpose of all this other than to smear, right? You get on the radio, you say you want to say one thing, you say all these 10 other things. I try to be patient with you, but you trashed Ed Meese. You trashed Trump. You say he didn't pay his bills, right? Trump and Biden have something like $200 million or $250 and $280 million respectively. So when you go to Wildwood, New Jersey to have a rally, guess what? The city of Wildwood, those people, they supply the space. And they say, hey, you want to do a rally here? Super. We're going to help you. And we're going to give you local police department here paying overtime to make sure that the safety and security is here, because we want to have the former president of the United States here. There's no bill being stiffed. This is the craziest thing. Somebody recently also told me, they're like, oh, Trump went somewhere after one of his campaign appearances and bought a bunch of burgers and didn't pay the bill. Come on. Really, come on. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. These are just cheap shots trying, because Trump is going to call in right after you and say, you know what, David, that's false, it's fake, it's phony, it's fraud. He's not going to do that. But it's such a low blow, David. If you're going to say something, say something that's substantive, or for once, say something like, you know what, I may not like Trump and disagree with his policies, but I'm glad they didn't kill him, and I'm glad that, we didn't have an assassination of a president on Saturday. But no, instead we get he doesn't pay his bills. David, thanks for the call. Folks, the rest of your calls and more coming up.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. More calls than time, and I just want to shout out everybody right now. Doc in Wilmington, WDEL, Frank in Evergreen, KOFI, Joe in Salem, Arkansas, KSAR, Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ, Jim in Pittsburgh on KDKA, Clark in Meridian, Mississippi, WALT. I want to quickly say there's a few of you that have some claims or want to talk about the divine intervention of Trump moving his head right at the perfect moment. Yes, that's 100% true. 100% true. It's what I saw. I think you're 100% right. I think God showed his providence on Trump at that rally and saved his life. And I'm thankful for it. And I'm very sorry again. My condolences and prayers for solace and peace for the family of former Fire Chief Corey Comparator, who was killed, murdered by the shooter and the bullet that was meant for Trump at that rally. Now, let me see. Will Trump fix his ear or leave it as is? If I were Trump, I'd leave it as is, and that's a battle wound forever. And you could use it in speeches for the rest of your life. Say, hey, look at this. You see this little chunk of cheese missing from my ear? Like Swiss cheese? That's because I got shot in the head and I missed. And let's see. J.D. Vance, not my first pick. My first pick was Byron Donalds, as you know. The jury's still out on J.D. Vance. I'm looking forward to learning more. Changes to the Secret Service. We did a whole hour on that. They're not good, and they need to be made quickly to get them right. Folks, that's all I've got. Hasta la próxima. I am Rich Valdez. Take care, good night, and God bless. God willing, I'll be back tomorrow. We'll do it again. Don't go anywhere.